This is, and you'll see there's Helen Downs did my cover. She did an exceptional job, in my humble opinion. Max Rempel, the guy, the Russian I'm co-authoring the thing with, did the foreword, and Julie, my girlfriend, did final proofing in the manuscript. And then Caregiver out of Texas has been giving me $100 a month that he wants back with interest. So I'm gonna have to pay him back on that. Now, the dedication is to Iona because she helped me on this. Now, what I'm going to show you is the title, the chapters. I start with sacred geometry and show how it's related to the Kabbalah. Then I start my system, and I have a format in Magic that I use, which has the philosophy, the orientation, and the well, it's the exercise, but these are now contemporary and conclusions. But this is, you know, the magic that you have, the path working has a purpose, orientation. And I started that way, way back, the 3 levels before I even understood archetypes and things like that. And the philosophy is, where it came from, the Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation. And we'll show you some of that psychological meaning and so on. The orientation is solid state physics because, and the vector equilibrium matrix, and the common ground between psyche and matter. That's your thought inside your mind and what you call reality. Then there's an exercise on how you do it. And how I got at this was that I had moved the Manager Foundation from Topeka, Kansas to the University of Washington and added video feedback systems. That was the birth of Cymatic. There is an individual that I haven't put in the book that I am going to, who was a graduate student that worked for me for special credit, that when he graduated, he went down to Steamboat Springs Healing Center and used sound and light as a form of healing. And he's dead now. He died a couple years ago. I can't believe it. I'm outliving everybody. It's weird. But he is real famous, and I'll come to him in a minute. The visualization part is essential. And what happened was that I started noticing topologies of resonance, meditation and resonance effect. That's when I wrote magical use of standing waves and geometrical matrix and the magical altar, the double cube. There's difference between the cube and the double cube. That's the cube is you, and the double cube is the second part of you. And then the conclusion, the quintessence, is where I got into neural feedback and video feedback self-realization concept with biofeedback, video feedback, pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is a very extremely important thing in terms of how that was Manfred Klein's work. And we'll talk about him a little model. And then the block diagram, the software, the other software that I'm going to provide in geometry and archetypes, the vector, how to do real-time color graphics, summaries, conclusions, footnotes. Now, that's the diamond body, a video yantra for self-realization. And what I did is that movie, Eat the Sun, when I was doing this work, I helped write that book, science fiction about a new religion based on biofeedback called Eat the Sun, Then You'll Be Your Own Father. And it was basically one best picture of the year in Cannes as a short. And it's really cool. All my friends are doing it. Bert, who co-authored the holographic concept with me, is the He's the spokesperson for the Vicar of Alejandro. For that, you'll have to join this church. It's just
Now, let me ask you a question, Rick.
yeah.
Who's this book for?
What's that?
Who is this book for? Who would want to read this book, and what would they want to find out?
I'm going to suggest that this book is the birth of cymatics, the importance of sacred geometry. Why, historically, certain patterns like the Fibonacci and things of those natures, why they're so important historically, even today, where you find them in nature. Why do you find them in nature? That's a good question. That led me to the second book I did in 1979, where I did Electro-Magick, where I used Mora and Endomet German acupuncture equipment on the top of the forehead rather than using drugs to get high. The drugs are toxins, okay? But they have a chemistry that's very similar to, but different than the neurotransmitter. And what happens is your immune system sees this toxin like a mushroom, the psilocin or normobiocystin coming into your body, and it goes into red alert and overproduces its own amide, like lysergic acid diethylamide is not lysergic acid amide. And amide is the one your brain has, and that's the one that keeps you high for 20 hours. That particular one opens a specific door in the multiverse, which I'm writing with Max Rumpel. Max read this book. This is something I did back in the 70s now, realized this guy is in 20, doing DNA stuff off his friend and his forward, just giving you a back on that. The book is absolutely and timeless. And he talks about one thing is unique because of that. It's hard to find analogs to such work in literature. It's like I'm Secret Doctrine with Blavatsky and others. His orientation, and he discovered May with bioresonance therapy, writing. I worked in 1972 and 74 with Burt Webb, going way back. And what happened, he wrote a nice little forward. This is how you lay out a book I'm learning how, and I open it with Aleister Crowley. There it is. And the diamond body, and I talk about it as an intro. Eopan, pan, pan, eopan, pan. Crowley, I'm not a Crowleyite. A teacher can only take you as far as they themselves have gone. Crowley died as a drug addict in Hastings. Properly said, however, at that time, our concept of addiction did not include things like morphine and heroin. We didn't understand those concepts of addiction like spousal abuse and gambling. And they're different than drugs. And I'm got my own limitations, so just bear with me. Yoga,
well, I think that just under that picture of Aleister Crowley is a really good summary of the outcome of this book. The Diamond Body is a contemporary meditation technique.
Yeah,
secret practices
that's why
with
I
over
chose that.
4,000.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned. You maybe, but you can see how it's laid out. This is numbered 1 and 2 after the, and I'm finally got rid of artifacts. I'm doing the whole thing, my entire self, and again the sacred geometry. And there's your. I'm going to show you the diamond body, and then I'm going to stop. That'll be enough for the day, children. We talk about Euclidean and non-Euclidean geometry, what the differences are, trying to educate you. And then I get into what's positive in curvatures and what's flat curvatures. Positive is going outward, negative is going inward, flat, like Earth. Then that's the diamond body right there. And you can see the tree of life is in there. There's a whole bunch of other things. I'm going to probably change this picture where these dots are out because I use this picture elsewhere. And so that's one picture I'm going to change. But the geometry of the Kabbalah, I start with Paul Foster Case. There he is. He was Boda, the builders of the Addendum. I have all of their publications in my library. I've got everybody's things you've never even heard of. I started a thing with Phyllis Seckler called for AA, our GM Argentum, it's called the College of Thelema. And the publication is in the Continuum. And the only reason I'm in that is because I'm the only person in history, literally, that has a publication in Class B like Aleister Crowley. I'm the only person in history as publication. And Grady gave me that. And I'm Oak Oasis. And there is your vector equilibrium. And then we start to get into the tree of life. I'm going to teach you how to use that as a metaphor for path working and going into states beyond anything you can. I'm going to get into one original piece of document. There's some right there, the tensegrous sphere and the concept of a wave. And the concept I'm doing with Max, talking about the multiverse is called the proton cloud, between when a proton is a wave and when it becomes a particle. And that's where all the multiverses lie, of which there are billions of you. How many decisions just today did you do differently on your breakfast cereal that would have changed Skype and our talk today? And each one of those forms a different universe in the way you affect the dog next door and the ant that crawled up Granny's ass and whatever. And that are all those universes exist. We're going to get into the cubahedron. I'm going to get into some serious geometry and talking about how you do it downtown. And there's your snowflake. And then the diamond body, that's the real diamond body that opens the diamond body solid state. And I open with Wolfgang Pauli and a painting from Iona.
So if we were to encapsulate what the diamond body is.
It is something that's more than force space. It is a structure that has more dimensions to it, as it would imply just in the artwork. And when you meditate on that and put yourself in the center, you create your own wormhole. Where do you want to go? When do you want to go? And it turns out using this system is easier to go further and in both time and space than shorter distances where you need things like astral projection and remote viewing. But I used this system and took 12 NASA scientists as a union group to Mars, not astral projection, not remote viewing, another form of wormhole. And I did that in 1983 as Yogatronics.
And does this become a spiritual wormhole travel?
Spirituality is not what you do, but how you do it. So no, it's not spiritual in that sense of it. Your intent and purpose. Okay, that's where spirituality lies, is in the intent.
Okay, so I might clarify it. So when we're traveling through this internal wormhole, are we traveling there as consciousness?
Yes, you're more conscious than you are right now. Consciousness per se is a dream state that requires connection with your lucid dreaming body, which has
So
more
that-
content to reality. You
So it's the
use
same feeling when we astral travel or we have these experiences, how people often say that it feels more real than reality.
yes, it does. It adds more detail.
Yep.
You filter in consciousness. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't have believed it. That's why belief systems are supposed to be tools, not absolute.
Sure. Now, if we just double back to the scientists that you took to Mars, what was the purpose when you did travel to Mars there via the
I wanted to
consciousness?
confirm the water on the Mariner 4 that went by in 1964 using my high school science fair project of 1962. They used it on the Mariner. Basically, what I did is I created particles going faster than the speed of light. And when they hit different objects, there was a diffraction or slowing down of the particle. That's what Mariner 4 did. And that's where we discovered that Mars literally has more water than Earth does, where Earth's oceans are mostly underground and Earth's mostly water. Well, Mars is even more so. And you have to wonder what happened there and why, what is the asteroid belt? Because to live on Mars, I don't know if you saw that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie on Mars, where, the pressure and so on. Now, what I've done is I've written a screenplay that is called The Domes of Mars, using Asha Deliverance's geodesic dome from Buckminster Fuller. And that's probably the best structure for outer space, is a geodesic dome where 1/3 of it is allowed to, above ground, catching sunlight, and 2/3 of it is underground to protect you from radiation and other kinds of creep out there. See, the problem is the Earth has a Van Allen belt. And if you don't punch a hole in that when you do a rocket going through, you have a Challenger experiment happening, because there's no way to get through that unless you punch a hole. That's what HAARP was developed for. And previous to HAARP, we were using other kinds of radiation. And what happened with Challenger was really a tragedy. And your so-called Morgellons was when that nematode experiment that was on the Challenger mutated with life forms in the xenosphere, and then the places where it fell on Earth. Basically, people had worms coming out of their body, and that's a nematode that had mutated. And by the way, my studies now indicate if you have Morgellons, simple way of getting rid of it is the simple way you get rid of worms. It's as simple as you do any other worming. And wormwood, the United States doesn't have the program that Europeans do in Mexico. Mexicans, the reason their food is all hot is that chili goes in, and that chili goes in and kills, worms and other kinds of crap that's in their water all the time. In any case, I thought you'd like to have a brief introduction. Started this in '81, and Iona was doing the artwork and helping me with this, and the immortal body.